Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga, and it's my pleasure to see every one of you here in Ukraine Media Center, Ukrinform. It's been 10 years of the war, and today is day 748 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And traditionally, I want to thank the representatives of all the mass media who work to tell the truth to the world about this war and our heroic fight for freedom. So today we have invited you to talk about support of Ukraine's cultural and creative sectors through opportunities and mechanisms offered by us by Creative Europe program. So let me introduce our speakers today. Joining us today are Mykola Ulyanov, EU Creative Europe program Desk Europe. Joining us online is Tetyana Shulga, EU delegation to Ukraine. Also joining us are Oksana Sarzhevska-Kravchenko, ISOLYATSIA Foundation, Yulia, Alenina, NGO Insha Osvita, Olga Terefeeva, National Union of Architects of Ukraine, and Olena. So, good afternoon, dear friends. Mr. Mykola, let's start with you. Let's talk about the opportunities provided by this program. Whom does it support? And obviously, let's talk about the projects that we were able to implement thanks to this support. Good afternoon, everybody. The program of European Union Creative Europe is the biggest support program to support the cultural and creative sectors in Europe. Among the participants, there are 40 countries, all of the European Union countries, countries of European Economic Zone, and associated countries that have specific agreements aimed at participation of their countries in this program, and Ukraine is one of those countries. The budget for the years 24-27 is 2.4 billion euro, and the program supports all of the areas and sectors of culture and creative industries. Currently, at this moment, since the program is really the biggest one, those opportunities provided by the program specifically to support the culture in Ukraine through its mechanisms, they are exceptional. And Ukraine Executive Agency on Education and Culture in year 22, in view of the security circumstances Ukraine ended up in, initiated a special bid for Ukraine as a specific and exceptional mechanism to support culture and creative industry in Ukraine. The contest was called the support of internally displaced persons in Ukraine and support of the cultural and creative sectors in Ukraine. That was the program of Cascade Grants, and its specifics is that the implementation of the projects offered at the stage of the submission or application is financed by the consortiums, where the participants as a consortium should be an organizations from Ukraine, because only organizations from Ukraine are the ones who understand the context well, and only they understand how could they better support culture in Ukraine, cultural organizations, and thus ensure the post-war recovery. And now it was our initiative, the Bureau of European Union Cultural Programs in Ukraine, so we've gathered the grantees of this project, the Ukrainian organizations, because now two of those two grantees can make their first conclusions about implementation of the projects. That was a very good case of support of Ukrainian culture in Ukraine, and this is why we've decided to organize an event like this, and among other programs, Creative Europe most of all. Ms. Tetyana, I hope you're hearing and seeing us pretty clearly, and I'm sure you have something to add. So let's give the floor to you. Good afternoon. The Creative Europe is really a very important, but not the only support component of the support of European Union in the area of culture. This support is exercised for a number of years. It was intensified due to the internal processes going on in the European Union, specifically adoption of the strategy of European Union that was called to international cultural relations. It was adopted back in 2015. It was time when Ukraine was joining the preliminary phase of Creative Europe program, and at the same time it was reinforced by the cooperation on the national level, I mean between the EU and Ukraine. Thus the first program was started that was called Culture Bridges, that was implemented by the British Council back then as a member of European Union. And after that, House of Europe happened, a huge program that now works as an example of the cooperation between European Union in the area of culture with the third country on the global level. So that was a program of large scale, and no other such program was ever implemented before, and I cannot even count a number of equivalents all around the world. So the program will continue. It's another sub-grant program, quite big, and on top of that there was a number of other initiatives of grant nature that were implemented during peacetime. With the beginning of the full-scale invasion, with the beginning of Russian full-scale aggression, we had to reorient our cultural grants to help the artists, to help the communities. Miss Oksana, who will have the floor later, may recall such a grant that was implemented by ISOLYATSIA, and on top of that we were trying to reinforce to the extent possible the protection and movement of the cultural values in the context of the program that is exercised by ALIV, support of the museums, prompt support that was implemented on the very next day after the damage, like in the context of bombarding of the art museum in Odessa. In fact, they got support for their repair works, and within a week after it was damaged, they proceeded to those works. We support digitalization of museum collections where it is necessary. It is done through our Lviv partners, Tustin NGO. In this hall, we were in the studio, we were presenting the Respol program recently that contemplates expert support by the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. So in fact we work in all possible areas, and we will continue supporting culture, and we will pay special attention to building and support of that productive layer of Ukrainian culture, support of Ukrainian artists, small organizations, to support them through small grants, as we think that culture and creative industries are exclusively important for the resilience of the country and for its further development. It's the propellant that provokes changes, provokes dialogue in the society, that helps to sew the country together, as we were saying a couple of years ago. It helps to set up communication between the people who don't always share the same values, or who are divided by their attitude to this or that issue, how to find ways to coexist on certain territory, on one territory, specifically in case of internally displaced persons being accepted by other communities. So there's a lot of challenges in front of the Ukrainian culture, and we hope that we will be able to support it in all those difficult tasks faced by it. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tetyana. So a question right away: within a period of full-scale invasion, how many projects you were able to support, or how many artists? Well, we don't maintain any such statistics, but we're talking about hundreds of organizations. Even if we present those projects that will be described later, so they cover dozens of organizations, but there were previous sub-grants that were exercised through reorienting projects, the support of House of Europe. So we're talking about hundreds of artists and organizations who were able to get training, or residents who were getting small grants to perform their projects. So in fact, it's a significant number of organizations and artists and other cultural actors, cultural managers, the employees of budget organizations, but unfortunately we don't have very precise statistics in this area. Thank you very much. So let's proceed to the projects that were successfully implemented. Ms. Oksana, let's give the floor to you so you could share your story with us. Thank you. I want to ask our technical team to put the presentation on the screen. The presentation of our ISOLYATSIA NGO. So meanwhile the slides are being put on the screen, let me continue the idea of Ms. Tetyana when we were bringing up this question about the number of supported organizations or artists during the period of full-scale invasion on our end, according to our statistics. Something that was happening with the support of European Union and the delegation of European Union in Ukraine. So the previous project that started its active implementation and was reoriented in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, by the results of the project, we got 98 applications from the communities that were supported in the area of urgent help to the population to overcome the consequences of the war. It seems like the figure 98 is not just very big, but if we look at the final number of beneficiaries of this aid, the numbers are substantial. And what we've seen during our work with the community, a very widespread demand from the communities was the support of their culture. It was our second area of support. So support of the culture really matters, it's necessary. And almost every application was containing this mentioning that support is necessary for the culture. So we've supported more than 70 projects within year 22 and until the mid of the year 23 that was contemplated by the previous project. And talking about the project that was based on the results of Zmina 2.0 with the support of European Union, we have quite an extensive support in the amount of 1.4 million euro in sub-grants. That is a significant fraction of all the aid that is distributed between the two levels, national and international level, national projects and international projects that are divided in waves as it's a cascade grant. And for us, we have the final way where the applications are being submitted, and if we check the statistics, you can see how many applications were already submitted. 148 for the first wave and 169 applications for the second wave of national program, that is where the bidding is going on for the time being. 12 regions are implementing the projects all around Ukraine. And talking about the international projects, we have 9 countries where the presentation of the results is going on. Ukrainian cultural projects are being implemented there, and those projects are not only about the culture, not only to create the cultural project. The main idea here is to bring up the topic of Ukrainian post-war recovery, because we understand that now during the war sometimes it's difficult to think about it, but many of us start pondering over this, what's going to happen during the post-war time, how Ukraine will operate specifically, how can we reinforce on that level that already is raised, the level of cooperation is raised between civil society and local governments, local authorities. You know, it became very visible during the war, and on this wave the number of very good projects increases, and what we're presenting in 9 countries based upon the results of the first international wave of projects, those are the projects that represent not only the culture, but generally they draw the attention to the problems of Ukraine, to the way the cultural sector operates, as well as cultural actors, artists, and their role in having the war won the soonest possible. And out of the first projects that we implement are the Malta and Venezia Biennale, where the finalists will be presented, the finalists of our programs. Also on our end, we've held a lot of events to support the organizations, to make sure that they have more opportunities to get funding, skills and knowledge to become more successful in other projects as well. So basically, should we have more questions during the Q&A session, I will be open to answering all of them. Miss Oksana, can you give the examples of some successful cases that were implemented both outside of our country and inside? Maybe you have some examples that are most vibrant and that may be familiar to our spectators and listeners. So talking about the current wave, we are implementing the projects, and out of that may be famous in the international level. Let me repeat myself again, just like always, it's the new program of Malta Biennale. Ukraine will be represented there for the first time. And talking about Venice Biennale, the fact that Ukraine takes part there is a high level already. It's an indicator by itself. Other projects are of a very high quality too, but they're happening in other countries. We didn't set specific tasks for us to work in some Biennale only because this is not how the cultural sector works. It should be more diverse. But talking about the previous projects, specifically about those that we've already performed, you know, all of the projects are fine, but something that is resonating with me personally is the project of Kherson organization that implemented the project during occupation of Kherson. And you know, omitting it, I mean, every time I recall it, we have a lot of grants. It's quite a sensitive situation, and the way that the team was working, how they were getting in touch, I mean, all those security risks, it's an example of heresy. And you know, we have a lot of such organizations, but this Kherson organization, we will be able, I hope, to disclose this situation someday. Our provider of the grant, they have all of the situation, but now we cannot disclose it due to the security reasons. But that's the clear example of why we need support. So NGO Insha Osvita, we understand that now we are probably going to other projects. So Miss Yulia, let's give the floor to you. So good afternoon, my name is Yulia. I'm a representative of the NGO Insha Osvita and coordinator of the Culture Helps NGO. So Insha Osvita works since 2018, and for a long time we were working with educational projects, and they were always somewhere in between because it's an informal education for the adults. We were looking for ways how to bring the education back to the non-education practices, and it was happening in the most successful way in the creative industries sector. And you know, culture helps, it helps. I want to continue the last saying of Oksana, the culture does help, and within this program we work with the topic of decrease of minimization of the impact of the full-scale invasion on the civilian population, but specifically we work on the topics of reintegration and adaptation of both internally displaced persons and those who were forced to live abroad. We also work with the topic of the mental health during the war, and we are trying to work in the area of standardization of approaches to this issue. And recently, well, last Friday, we've launched the first lecture among the supporting programs. Basically, what is it made of? It's a three-layer system of grants, individual grants that are aimed to support the mental health of the managers of cultural sector, civil activists, artists. So basically, we support those who invest their resources right here, right now, to help mitigate the impact of the forced movement, forced displacement for civil population through such tools as culture and art. And for every open call we have awareness sessions where we try to cover all the issues, how to submit an applications, how to raise funding, or not only funding but other resources which is useful for our grantees. Also we have awareness sessions, like last Friday we've launched a series of lectures. It's basically a scout program, so you know the application was made in English and it's for scouts. You know, you cannot always find an equivalent in Ukrainian language, so we work with SciCulture, who organize a number of webinars for us, within which we help understanding what are other instruments, how to work to maintain your mental health. The contest was very active, and during the open call we were getting about 500 applications. Meanwhile, we may fund only 2024, so basically 6.1 applications per one place. We understand that's a very intense contest, and very frequently people do not even know how to help themselves, so we've decided that this scout program will be relevant and successful. It's a benefit that has more of a broader impact than just a grant system, just a regular funding that not all of the people get. This program will be recorded and available later. All of the workbooks, advices will be available later to whoever will want to Google them. So it's a long-term impact, and what's important too is that this program was created during the full-scale invasion with account of all those aspects, which is extremely important too. As a result, we will proceed to the manual or guideline. We will put it in one book that will be able to describe more precisely how to work with different categories of population, because internally displaced persons is one target audience, but there are different levels among them. There are elderly, there are children, there are those who have experienced it for the second time, there are people who spend some time in occupations. So those categories are, so to say, layered, and the organizations who work with this target audience or used to work and now continue to, this manual will be helpful for them to take care about their team, to make sure that this cooperation is ecological from both sides, so that nobody hurts those with whom they work even worse. So another way of cooperation will be to build the bridges, to build the ties, and to reinforce the existing ties that will be more aimed at our grantees, those who we supported already. We have international grants level where we want to reaffirm this cooperation, to make sure that this cooperation is sustainable and the projects can continue, and in future We have more meetings. There will be another meeting in Ukraine if security situation will allow us to do so. So a couple of figures for the year 2023. On the individual level, we were able to support about 70-80 applicants for the total amount of 2.5 million hryvnias. So individual level, other applications to support the mental health, small budget up to €1,000 just to support the applicant as a specialist who worked through the instruments of instruments of culture and art with the internally displaced persons. The project grants are for the organizations. We had 24 of them, and the total amount of funding was 4 million hryvnias. They were local projects. Very important for us was to support different projects in different parts of Ukraine, and during the first wave we were saddened by the fact, we were upset by the small number of applications from the south, and there were no representatives of the south who would have been supported. We had more during the second wave. We've supported some of them. We've recommended some of them for funding, which is fine, which is beautiful. But during the first round, we've seen the projects from Zaporizhia that were exercised by a communal organization 40 kilometers from the front line. The team was really obstinate, you know. They had a lot of air raid alerts. They were like real stubborn. They got a treasury account where they got their funding allocated, and they continue working, and they, you know, they are being added to the program of the international level. And during on the international level, we had only first wave. We supported 10 projects with a total amount of 13 million hryvnia. And we had quite interesting consortiums, quite interesting projects there. But they are all currently being implemented. We're still waiting for reporting. We'll see what happens next. But the projects are almost over, and the coverage was pretty decent. But for me, in this re-granting system, the most important are the individual grants, even no matter that the amounts are smaller and there is no cultural product as it is created. So it's the maximum of statistical data that I can make public out of our analytics. So it's a very simple evaluation that we were asking our grantees to undergo to evaluate their level of their mental health in the beginning and in the end of the program. So did anything change during the program or not? So basically we only have one person who didn't have some significant changes, but basically among others the indicators are quite high of the change of their condition, of their circumstances, which is an indicator for me that we do it for a reason. We've supported 70-80 specialists who now can get back to their work and to proceed with their projects, to continue doing what they were doing. And basically to make sure that the number of those projects grows, we support all those managers, activists and artists. Will continue working. We have 2 more waves planned this year in April and in October, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I am mistaken, it's March and August. So the conditions basically are the same, the amounts did not change either. We'll continue working with this. So we will probably only shift the accent a little bit to make sure that our grantees, well, you know, they confuse what is art therapy, what tools can be considered art therapy, and to educate them, we're developing an educational program. So we're called Insha Osvita, other education for reason. We help them get the skills to make sure they work in the most professional manner possible, and it corresponds with what it's called, with the definitions used by our applicants. So among the projects that we've supported on international level of grants, quite demonstrative was cooperation between the Kharkiv organization 127 Garage. It's a sustainable institution that was working in Ukraine with the tool of art residences, and they found a partner in Graz, Austria, another residence program, Rotor, and they organized a residence called Home. It's an initiative that during their residence they were working with the topic of integration and they were developing the definition of home. Where is home? What it is like? Whether the home is where the heart is, or whether I was left without my home. So the project is underway. So let's see what cultural projects and all art products will be created. They will have some final event somewhere in April, I think. So it's about the fact that 127 Garage team, they lost their homes. The team left Kharkiv partially, not all of them. And for them this issue is very personal and very sensitive, and it's good they have such a tool as an art residence where they can work with their new experience, documenting it, reflecting it, and with the help of this reflection to translate it, to highlight this topic all around the world and continue talking about it in the international arena. And we are really happy that we are able to provide such support under our program. So talking about international grants, all of the waves are already closed. Unfortunately, we will have no more of them. There is the third phase of selection so far underway, and then there is another project in the contracting phase, and we will be happy to see organizations in Mariupol in the second wave for whom it's sufficient to recover and continue their activities in the countries where they are currently based. Our help desk also is operating, and we have an awareness session going on today, so I'm open to all of your questions during the Q&A session. Miss Olga, let's give the floor to you. The National Union of Architects of Ukraine. Good afternoon, my name is Olga Terefeeva. I'm the representative of the National Union of Architects of Ukraine, one of the participants of the grants, which is called Yulia. So I would like to start with the words of appreciation, because it's a very important, significant event for us during our support. We have a lot of bureaucratic limitations in terms of engagement of specialists during the war, and I appreciate the input of all of our European partners for the fact that during the first days of the full-scale invasion they started discussing what we can do for Ukraine. Those were architects of the Europe, and in fact it was very inspiring. It was helping us to plan, to get distracted, you know, to stay in some positive mood. As we were seeing our architecture, our territory being destroyed, and only the idea that we will preserve, that we will recover it all, that we will rethink it all, that was helping us. This is why I want to thank all of the partners who supported us and who get more actively involved in the project. Your heritage means Ukraine are and heritage as a heritage. So it's rethinking of Ukrainian heritage, to re-identify, to study it, to look for the ways to preserve it, to look for methodologies, to involve more new practices, and involve all of the available successful European practices in preservation of Ukrainian heritage. It's very important because on one hand, thanks to the fact that we had a huge pause, a long pause after the Soviet period in terms of active recovery of the heritage, we had this pause in sense of technologies, in sense of active use of heritage. We had the practice of museification of heritage, but not use of it. European countries after the World War II had significant damages, significant level of destruction of both historical buildings and residential areas, and every country had their very intense and interesting experience, and it's worth studying. Why am I focusing on? because Europeans have already paid for their solutions and they see the consequences of this or that decision haven't been taken. And for us as Ukrainians, we don't have to invent the bicycle once again. We only have to study their experience. We have to analyze it, not to copy it, but implement what fits Ukrainians best, as it corresponds the requirements, as it corresponds the existing principles of preservation of resources, preservation of the ways to rethinking the heritage. So we should start and implement this principle of build back better. So Yuri Herod has a slogan, architects for the heritage of Ukraine, for a creation of heritage and memory. Our coordinator is Ruta Leitanaitė, who is a representative of the Lithuanian Society of Architects. We enjoy their extensive support and we want to thank them because they were the propellant of this project. They were the guarantor of the grant, because even in Ukraine, those who understand about the grants and the level of trust, we understand that we need such an foreign recommenders who will guarantee that we will be able to perform the huge, intense programs. And Lithuania plays a very significant role there. You know, their level of Russophobia is just as same as in Ukraine, which is very inspiring. Why is it inspiring? Because on top of studying the heritage as our source of self-identification, our material evidences of our culture, of our identity, the heritage is basically a resource that the resource of evidences of the fact that we are a separate, independent country with our own history, our own roots. It's different. It's a strong argument during the information warfare. You know, all of the cultural arguments are something that you see lately in the news, something that helps us, no matter how surprising it is, but it helps us to get more weapons. I understand that defense is not a topic of this discussion, but somehow the cultural heritage works. Moreover, we know about other programs that we try to implement where the military take into account the objects of cultural heritage to make sure that they don't target them. So they calculate their shellings, even, our Ukrainians, they calculate it in a way to preserve the cultural heritage during their attacks, and it's very, very important. We have a lot of partners, only 3 from the Ukrainian, on the Ukrainian side. As a Ukrainian Society of Architects, we are a powerful organization, we're a big organization, which is more than 70 years old. The union is a self-governing organization, professional organization, and as an organization it has more than 5,000 members, 25 regional representative offices. Why is it important? Because the union understands the needs of the regions. There are professionals working there, the experts. And why is it important? Because we see the way the superficial decisions may result in unwanted consequences. And I'm talking about the recovery here. We've all seen how the liberal attitude to the recovery was of harm to Turkey when the earthquake happened. Liberal attitude to recovery created this tragedy. There is a lot of populistic aspirations, decisions as to the reconstruction, you know, such kind of fast food solutions. Union as a professional society calls for study, analysis and use of the verified technologies, and to adapt the available technologies of restoration and reconstruction, if it's possible, to bring them in compliance with the European legislation, to find a way, not the prompt way, not a shortcut, but one of the vice premiers of the union, Anna Karish, she says that the winners don't build Khrushchev apartment blocks. They build a quality residence, and this quality, it goes from inside, from the understanding of the needs of the recovery of the country, not through industry, but maybe through cultural and art areas that will help us to reset the economy. I have a lot of hope in cultural sector as well as tourism, which will be a derivative of such recovery. I put a lot of hope in this, and I hope that our main sponsor of protection of Ukrainian cultural heritage, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, will help us in that. Our partners are the professional unions. You can see the list of them on the screen. They all have their own practice of recovery, and in compliance with this practice and the best solutions, the project is segregated in a number of areas, is divided inside your heritage. That's in brief about the idea of the project. In our heritage, we want to find the moments of self-identification and resource for recovery, the resource to make sure that we not only have those cultural and information advantages, but also to find there a foundation for economic recovery. This is why the study of the heritage and its use is an important area of work. Well, I apologize, I don't see quite well. I'm losing my sight with age. So let me take a peek at my phone. So this is what I was saying. So the project is going on for 3 years. It started this last August. The first meetings were in Lithuania. We launched there was an active work going on since the very first days of the full-scale invasion to prepare this grant and its planning. And again, I want to extend the appreciation to our partners who got involved in planning during the beginning of the full-scale invasion, when not everybody was believing that we would be able to resist. So what interesting happened is that we have started the meetings, we've started the exchange between the members of the project. We had the first big event happened, and I want to draw everyone's attention to it. It happened in Lviv. There was a huge conference that was going on for 2 days in Lviv, and the event itself, it kind of agitated the communities, because it turned out that the heritage it had so many gaps as a topic. There was so much silence around it that even experts who had some work in this area, but due to the gaps in legislation and education, because lately, you know, if you follow this topic, the restorators are not being trained or educated. Now there is a phase of re-implementation of the educational programs for the restorators. So we have a lot of heritage, which for many communities, and now I'm quoting Alexander Chizhevsky, the president of the union. He says that for the communities, the heritage is a punishment, because it's difficult in terms of restoration, of recovery. It requires professional presence and approach, design. Then it requires a huge budget, because it's very expensive, it's very costly, taken into account of all of the standards. And why would it become a tool of economic recovery? So basically the restoration itself touches upon a very important issue, the strategy of recovery of the country. What is our strategy? And basically, touching upon this topic of heritage, it agitated the community a lot. There were a lot of great speakers. We had more than 50 speakers who were present both personally and online. Timing? No, we still have a couple of minutes, but let's try to let everybody present here. So what is the result, the existing result of the project? What have you been able to fulfill? And then probably we will be able to finalize it. So we had a huge conference with a lot of great feedback. We had identified a lot of projects and demands all around the country, and having united. First of all, we presented Ukrainians their best side, like not like we were just sitting around, but we have experts. So this project, it has a very intense educational and enlightenment function, and we're humbled by the fact that we have experts who have something to tell to the foreign experts. After the conference, we've started the first, we already had 2 open calls. First one on the CPD program, which is translated as Continued Professional Development. So the professions are supposed to continue, and the architects have to refresh their knowledge, specifically in the area of heritage, the new research, technologies of documenting, technologies of preservation, restoration, scanning, and so on and so forth. So our principle is the same: one European partner, one Ukrainian partner. We have a lot of topics that we are just starting to work on. Basically, the next open call, the next topic. So the next open call that ended already, we are currently working on the results. They are the recovery of their Soviet era heritage, Soviet architecture. How can we reuse it? How can we properly adapt it? Because in European countries they have very good examples. Unfortunately, we have small number of examples on our end, and we want to use our fund to demonstrate how this Soviet heritage can be recovered. Now, during the war, we see that we need not the energy efficiency, but we need the full-scale recovery, restoration. We have a lot of plans. Ukrainian architects, engineers are working, which gives us hope that we will be able to restore everything. We continue working using the resources of the union, of our partners. We announce new projects like Phase by Step, the project that I said has a 3 years duration. Its main goal is to study and to engage the best European experience and practices, to implement the experience of the projects that are currently being worked on by European experts, to provide them with consultation in terms of investing, preservation, consulting, everything that they're missing to finalize this or that restoration recovery project, because they all work in other different areas, like education area, specifically architectural area. People deal with different types of heritage, like wooden sacral heritage. The beautiful things in Western Ukraine, they are phenomenal. They are still not well studied. We're still looking, I mean the professional community, we're still looking for the ways to preserve it. I think I'm beyond any time framework, but we're happy. We spread information, we continue working, we're active, and we try to engage all of the professional community in our project, and hopefully we will come up with the new techniques, new methodology. We will come up with the guidelines that will be disseminated in Ukraine, in the higher educational institutions, and we will keep informing you on that. Thank you very much. I would like to give the opportunity to our colleagues to ask their questions. Yana Lomachenko, Ukrinform. So what are the contest programs that enjoy the widest popularity among Ukrainian applicants? And the second question, what are the programs that are allocated the biggest budget. So let me start. I have statistics about Creative Europe. I remember in year 2023 we've supported 28 organizations exercising 32 projects, and the total amount of funding of Ukrainian organizations in year 23 was a little bit less than 5 million euro. So this statistics is available. The most popular contests are European cooperation projects. That's one of the flagman contests of the program under the cultural sector, and Ukraine has special results. Ukraine is a champion among 40 countries among spreading of European literature works. The deadline is on the 5th or 7th of April. You can check out the materials on our website, where Ukraine, well, all of the translations, many languages, 40 countries, 1/3 of all of the translations within this contest were either from Ukrainian or into Ukrainian. So that's the most popular contest, the biggest contest. So European cooperation contest is being funded in the amount of about 60 million euro on an annual basis. Dear friends, do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, now that we do not, I would like to thank everybody who gets involved in implementation of these kind of projects, making our country stronger. And I want to thank all of the international organizations, all of the donors who support these initiatives that become possible thanks to their financial support. Thank you very much, dear speakers. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. And obviously I want to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can have events like this. So let's continue working together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.